Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. This is my project, which was the development of my son's nursery. This is called Baby WJK's Nursery. Project overview. This was to create a nursery before the end of the year and allow a 4-week buffer, so this to be finished at the end of November in anticipation of his birth at the end of the year. I wanted to create a detailed budget with all of our furnishing requests, use various project management techniques, and then generate some lessons learned. My team members, I was the project manager and I had 3 of my family members, my wife, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law with their roles. This is the Gantt diagram. The project was anticipated to take 44 days. It only took 41 days. We started on 9/29 and actually finished on 11/24 instead of 11/30. It was broken into 3 phases, as you can see here, where most of the time was spent actually in phase 3. I ended up integrating a midpoint evaluation and a team debriefing for us to review everything that we had done up through that point. This is an AOA diagram, which is another way of looking at the Gantt chart, which is more helpful for my team members to see the various tasks, what the predecessors were, and then how they flowed from start to finish. This is our budget. We broke down the furnishings that we requested for his nursery into 6 categories. The estimated was how much we were willing to spend, and the current is how much we spent, or the zeros were what we were gifted. An important assumption with this project is that we would receive 50% of all items that we desired for completion of his nursery from family and friends as gifts. We were willing to spend $5,000, but ended up coming under budget at $2,400, saving, for example, in technology. This is a continuation of the Gantt diagram. It's a little busy, but this shows our actual dates versus our baseline dates, again finishing 4 days ahead of schedule versus 11/30. And then we can see over here our actual cost, baseline cost, and these other parameters. This is if we were to perform an earned value analysis, assuming that we were to charge for the amount of work. Again, all this was done because they were my family members. Nobody charged anything, but if we were, this is what the analysis would end up showing. We would end up being ahead of schedule, but over budget. So more specifically, with my family members and team here, I ended up researching that if I were a interior decorator in Ridgeland, Mississippi, I would charge $50 per hour, and my 3 team members would charge $10 per hour. This is running through Microsoft Project and getting a bunch of different numbers. The important stuff is to look at right here. It would cost nearly $20,000 for us to end up furnishing our room if we hired an interior decorator as well as 3 team members with that. Again, the actual cost of the work performed versus our baseline cost, we would be over budget, but again, it would cost over $20,000 to do it. These next 3 slides show similar findings. This is just showing essentially the idea that we were essentially over budget, but ahead of schedule. This shows our cost variance and our schedule variance. Similar findings. We were ahead of schedule, but over budget, especially toward the end and in phase 3. This is the performance indices, our schedule performance index and our cost performance index. What these show, again, is the overall meat and bones of the project. We were over budget, but we were ahead of schedule, and most of that occurred, those changes, at the latter phases of the project. An audit was performed by my father on November 14th, since he was a relatively objective source who was viewing from the outside of how the project was going. Overall, he thought that we were doing well. He said that we were under budget, there were no expected delays, and we had few tasks left to perform. He did not recommend any further changes. In the final report, the analysis, as a project manager, I thought we also did very well. I thought my team worked well together. We were under budget by $2,500 and ahead of schedule by 4 days. It was important that we kept accurate Gantt chart as well as the other project management techniques. We had a strong family dynamic. The one thing that was interesting is the 50% assumption that we'd receive those gifts. We knew we were going to have a child for a while, so we felt comfortable making that assumption. In the future, I would not be so cavalier by assuming we would get 50% of the funding from an outside source. I think breaking into phases helped us see the individual parts as well as the overall project and its flow. And my team members worked well together, and I would utilize similar project management techniques in the future. That's the completion of my presentation. Thank you for your time and listening to the development of my son's nursery.